We'll give it just another moment for a few other people to join. Thanks. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning. Thank you everyone for being at our webinar, where we'll talk about all the key rules for the new heat pump water heater incentives through Tech Clean California. This webinar will be recorded and we will post it on our Tech YouTube channel, and we'll also email you all after this meeting with a link to the video and also the slides. And just a quick request to everyone, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A feature, not the chat. That'll make it a lot easier for us to answer all your questions. Thank you. Okay, so a quick overview of what we're covering today. First, we'll give you a program overview, talk about these new incentives and some basics. Then we'll talk about contractor requirements, and we'll go into the incentives in more detail. Then we'll talk about customer eligibility, equipment eligibility, installation requirements, customer requirements, including the new demand response and time of use rate requirements. And then we'll look at some screenshots of the customer terms and conditions, just so you can see a little bit better how they are agreeing to those new requirements. And then we'll recap with some key considerations. And just wanted to remind folks that with this new round of heat pump water heater funding from the state, we don't have quite as much flexibility as you might have been accustomed to with the prior tech heat pump water heater funding. All of these rules really do need to be met 100% of the time in order to get the incentives. So we're really glad you're here on this webinar to learn all about that and be ready to do eligible projects. But this is a really exciting program with high incentives, higher than you've probably seen before. So we hope it's worth your while to become versed with the new rules. Okay, so we have $80 million in new incentive funding for heat pump water heaters through the Tech Initiative. And unlike the first round of Tech, where there was a shared budget between the heat pump HVAC and the heat pump water heaters, this is just an $80 million budget for water heaters specifically. About $4 million of this budget is for commercial projects, so that will be new to those already accustomed with Tech. This commercial funding is first time that we're offering it. And the rest of that budget is residential. And half of the residential budget is allocated for lower income customers. That is called the equity budget, and we will talk about that more later. We'll talk about what the income thresholds are as well. Just as always with Tech, this is for retrofit projects only, no new construction. And the eligible project types include residential, single family, multifamily, and commercial. And we'll talk more about those project types. And then the incentives do come with new optimization requirements. So for contractors, you'll have to install the heat pump water heater in a way that it's set up to shift electricity usage off of evening peak hours to some extent. And then customers will need to enroll in a demand response program and be on a time of use rate. And don't worry, we will discuss that fully later. Okay, so first let's understand the eligible heat pump water heater project types. You'll see us refer to these names a lot, including in the next slide that shows the incentive amounts. So for a little bit of terminology first, Unitary just means that one heat pump water heater is installed per dwelling or business. The heat pump water heater equipment itself can be integrated units or split systems. Residential unitary is any residential project where the heat pump water heater is serving a single dwelling. So this includes both single-family unitary and multifamily unitary project types. Multifamily is any property with 2 or more dwelling units. This is a slight shift from prior tech rules when multifamily was 5 units or more. So that's an important distinction to note this time. Multifamily is 2 or more dwelling units. We'll sometimes group single family and multifamily unitary into the one category of residential unitary because they share a lot of the same rules, such as incentive structures, which you will see soon. Now, multifamily central is any multifamily project with one central heat pump water heater system providing hot water to more than one household. Commercial unitary is any project where the heat pump water heater is serving one non-residential customer. They don't have to be truly commercial buildings. They could also be any non-residential buildings, such as a government building or a school, for example. And the commercial unitary category includes small business unitary and large commercial unitary. The small business means that the project is using the same equipment as residential unitary and follows the same rules. And large commercial means the project is using a commercial heat pump water heater project. Oops. All types of multifamily projects, as well as large commercial projects, require a reservation and proof of project milestone before submitting the final incentive claim. So with multifamily, I know you're already accustomed to the reservation process. So this proof of project milestone is a bit of a new thing though. So there is a 90-day timeline, which begins at reservation confirmation before the proof of project milestone must be submitted. And at that point, we will require all design drawings and equipment specifications. Okay, so a little bit of overview of our launch dates. As many of you are probably aware, we launched our single-family general market and our commercial incentives this Tuesday on Halloween. So that's very exciting. I hope you all are getting close to completing your re-enrollment and starting to install projects. And on the single family side, for the equity incentives, we have a bit of a delay. We are waiting on approval for an income verification portal, but we are very close on that. I would expect that that income verification portal would be launched within the month. No promises, but just to give you a sense of timing, and we will broadcast that out widely when that is available. And for the equity incentives, as I mentioned earlier, half of our residential budget is protected for those projects, so we're not at risk of any of that equity budget being used up before we launch those incentives. And multifamily will launch in December, unitary on December 5th, and central to be determined based on some qualified product approval at the regulatory level, but we're hoping it's on a similar time frame as the unitary, multifamily unitary. Okay, participant requirements. So here's the enrollment requirements. Overall basic requirements up at the top of the slide are very similar to tech as always. So contractors have to have one of the tech license types that includes the general A or B, C20, and C36, or any combination of that. No outstanding complaints with the Better Business Bureau. Take some new trainings listed below, so that's the new part, and we'll talk through that. And sign our updated trade professional participation agreement. So we did send that out to all contractors last Friday. So the trainings, At least one individual from your organization must attend an Energy Star Manufacturer Action Council webinar training. So the Tech and SMAC training is what it was called. Those are offered weekday mornings at 7 a.m. The next one is, I believe, November 13th. But we know that many of you have already taken that course. We've been offering it for many months now. So thank you to everyone for getting a jump on that and taking that training. And then others at your organization must either take that SMAC training, or technically a state certified apprenticeship program would meet the need, or they can take some manufacturer specific training located on our heat pump water heater training article on the contractor knowledge base. So there's a table on that article which shows the different manufacturer trainings that are approved and instructions on how to get training from those manufacturers. And just to clarify, every installer needs to take either the SMAC or one of those manufacturer trainings before they install incentivized projects. And in the enrollment process, you will be asked to self-attest and sign off on the fact that your installers will be taking those trainings. One thing missing from this slide actually is that there is an additional 15-minute onboarding training that is also a required training in order to complete your enrollment. That 15-minute training is basically a very condensed version of this webinar. Just gives you a quick hit of all of the new rules for these heat pump water heater projects. And that is located again on our learning management system, or it's called the Electrification Knowledge Hub, hosted by AEA. And we've been sending links to that in the enrollment emails that you all receive after you sign your Trade Pro professional or participation agreement. So again, there's that 15-minute training, and then there's just a quick knowledge check. It's about 10 questions. It'll make sure you absorb some of the very key rules about these new projects and a few heat pump water heater installation questions from the Energy Star Manufacturer Action Council training. Let's see, another couple quick notes. If you get questions wrong on that knowledge check, it's okay. You have the opportunity to go answer the questions again. And one more note on the SMAC training, you also need to have completed the post-course survey for your attendance to be complete. So if you haven't completed the survey, you can just log on to that same learning management system that we've mentioned the onboarding video lives on, and you can just take that survey after the fact, and then you'll check your box for completing the SMAC training. Okay, so here are the incentives. I know there's a lot to see here. First, the incentives are higher than ever before, and that is because of the new optimization requirements, which we'll discuss further soon. Next, you can focus on the first column as the base incentive level. So incentives start at $3,100 for general market. The amounts are pre-calculated for all of our project types except for multifamily central and large commercial. And for those projects, our team will work with you to calculate the incentive per project based on the thermal energy storage capacity of the system. And that capacity will be determined during the reservation stage. The residential central and large commercial projects have caps of $300,000 and $50,000 respectively. For residential central, one project is defined as one central heat pump water heater system. If you have a really large multifamily building, you could have multiple central systems, and they would just each be their own project. The additional columns in this table are additional incentive amounts that a project can earn. So if the heat pump water heater uses a low global warming potential refrigerant of 150 or less, and if the tank size is 50 gallons or larger. There's also incentives for eligible electrical upgrades. So for that electrical, It's up to $2,000 or 50% of the eligible electrical costs, whichever is lower. So for example, if the total electrical is $4,000 or more, you would get that full $2,000. And note that the tank size adder and the electrical incentives are only available for the residential unitary projects. So this slide is all about our general market incentives. And now we will see the equity incentives. So these higher equity incentives, again, are available to customers who meet certain income thresholds. We have a knowledge base article on the equity budget eligibility and verification for you to learn more. It's the same incentive structure as for general market. The base incentive is just higher by $1,085. And the electrical upgrade incentive is much higher, $4,000 instead of $2,000. And that can actually cover more types of costs. We will look at on the next slide, I believe. Yes, so here on the left-hand side of the slide are the eligible electrical upgrades, and those are eligible for general market and equity incentives. So that includes replacing, upgrading, or relocating the main service panel, installing a smart load center or smart circuit breaker, installing a sub panel, or upgrading a feeder and or secondary disconnect or dwelling unit main disconnect. And then on the right hand of the slide, we have the additional items that can be covered for the equity incentives with that $4,000 upgrade incentive. And so that can include relocating the heat pump water heater, any additional plumbing or wiring upgrades that are needed for the project to move forward, any venting activities if needed. And then if there was damage done because of the prior water heater being leaky or having improper venting, it can also recover remediation or repairing the flooring or walls or ceiling. And so it's important to note that these electrical upgrade incentives can only be paid to contractors who completed the work under their license, meaning that the majority of the measures can only be pursued by contractors with a General B or a C10 license. And again, a C10 alone cannot enroll in tech. They would have to have the combination of C10 and one of the tech eligible licenses such as C36 or C20. And we recognize that it's common for customers to contract separately with an electrician, and in the longer term, we'll be looking into the possibility to split these incentives up. And so say let the plumber get the heat pump water heater incentive and the electrician get the electrical upgrade incentive. But at the time of launch and for the foreseeable future, that is not possible. So we need the electrical to be done by either a B contractor who can sub the work out, or a contractor that has both the C10 and the C36 or C20 license. And we have a lot more information on this topic in our electric upgrade and pre-electrification incentives article on the tech contractor knowledge base. Just a quick plug for the tech contractor knowledge base while we're talking about it. It is a great resource of program information. It's a searchable website, so a great big search bar at the top that you can type in whatever you're looking for, and it'll suggest which articles have the right information for you. We also have a chat bot, so you can ask a question and they'll suggest the right information for you. So that is a great place to start if you have questions. We tried to make it as comprehensive of a resource as possible, and we'll continue to add to it as we get more questions from you all and understand what type of info we need to add. Okay, so a little bit of incentive rules that apply to all project types. Thermostatic mixing valves are required on all installations, and they must be properly installed and calibrated, and they must conform to the standards listed on the slide. We know that some products, especially the 120 volt units, have mixing valves integrated. Contractors must pass 100% of the incentive to the customer, and that incentive amount must be listed on the invoice. It is recommended to provide the incentive as an instant discount to the project cost, but contractors are also allowed to do a delayed pass-through if they wish to. Incentives are available for all types of replacements except heat pump water heater replacements, and the incentive amount is the same regardless of the former water heating type. So, same incentive rate for a gas conversion compared to an electric conversion. It's also important to note that incentives can stack or layer with other heat pump water heater incentive programs, and the total incentives from tech plus other programs are capped at the total project cost. So on the claim form, we'll be asking you to note the total amount of other incentives to contributing to the project. And if the total is above the project cost, we will cap that and just reduce the tech incentive amount. All right, let's get into customer eligibility. So 100% of residential customers in California qualify for the tech heat pump water heater incentives. As long as, the project meets all of the other requirements and it's replacing an existing non-heat pump water heater. For commercial projects, the eligibility is actually limited to businesses or facilities served by one of the 3 electric investor-owned utilities. So that is PG&E, SoCal Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. And specifically, customers have to receive their electric service from one of those 3 utilities. They cannot receive their electric from an electric municipality such as SMUD, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, or LADWP. This could change over time, though. There's some things happening on the regulatory front, so we will broadcast out widely if the commercial eligibility is expanded to cover some of the electric muni territories. You can refer also to our qualifying customers article. We'll keep that updated. And you can also always use the search incentives tool on the switches on, where you just type in a zip code and it'll let you know all of the incentives available in that area. That is a really great tool. And then just a reminder that customers may also qualify for the higher equity incentives. And just so you know, we include a note on those equity incentives on our terms and conditions, so you can always just point to that note on the terms and conditions to prompt customers to consider whether they might be eligible for those higher incentives. So speaking of which, here are the requirements for a customer to qualify for the equity incentives. So on the single family side, the customers must live in single family low-income residences, have to have a household income which is 80% or less of the area median income, or 250% or less of the federal poverty level, whichever of those is less stringent. So in some areas of California, the AMI will be lower, and in some areas, the federal poverty level will be lower. So this is a more expansive definition, being able to use both of those. The equity incentives are also available to customers who have participated in specific other programs that verify income, and the list of those programs are available on our knowledge base article about the equity incentives. For multifamily, the customer must live in deed-restricted low-income residential housing, and that also either needs to be located in a disadvantaged community, or the deed restriction needs to be specifically that at least 80% of the households have incomes at or below 60% of the area median income. And it's also available to customers who have participated in or are eligible for MASH or the SOMA solar projects programs. A reminder that these equity incentives have a slightly delayed launch, and we will update you when that is available. And Now we'll talk about how that income eligibility works. So we are close to launching an online third-party income verification service that customers will interact with directly. So they can upload, a wide variety of forms of income proof, such as tax documents, pay stubs, workers' comp, a lot of different options there, as well as approval letters for various other programs that could serve as their qualification. And then the provider of this tool will review that documentation, and as long as they're eligible, they will send the customer a PDF confirmation, which does not include personally identifiable information. And there's also an option for the customer to just put in the contractor's email address so that the contractor gets that PDF automatically as soon as the approval is complete. Otherwise, the customer can just share it with the contractor when they get it, and we will be collecting that PDF on the incentive claim form. And that is how we'll verify that the customer is eligible for those incentives so that we can offer them to you. For multifamily, it's a lot simpler. We will just collect a copy of the deed restriction during the reservation phase. Okay. We'll move on to eligible equipment next, but first I wanted to pause. We've covered a lot, and I wanted to see if there's been any questions that my team thinks we should repeat or answer out loud. Okay.
One question that did come in just now was somebody asking if a family residential household had two water heaters present, would they qualify for two incentives?
Yes, great question. So the limit is actually 2 heat pump water heaters per household. So you can get up to 2 as long as they are both replacing a former water heater. Thanks for asking and reading that out loud. Are there any other questions you'd like to cover now? Okay.
None other at this time, no.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. All right, let's get into the equipment. So here are the equipment eligibility rules by project type. Now let's start from the top. So for the residential unitary, and that's both single family and multifamily, as well as small business unitary, they all share the same qualified products list. And the rules for that is that the unit is listed on the CEC, the California Energy Commission's JA13 list. JA13 refers to the ability of the heat pump water heater to follow a time of use rate, which is one of the installation requirements that we'll talk about soon. And then the product also either has to be on the NEA residential heat pump water heater QPL with a yes in the EcoPort column, or it has to be on the Energy Star residential water heater QPL as a connected product. And as long as you're accustomed to installing, the major heat pump water heater brands, the products that you're used to should be on this list. For multifamily central, your standard central system needs to be approved and included in CBEC, which is the California Building Energy Code Compliance software. And then there's also an option to do a more rare type of multifamily installation, which we're calling individual or ganged together. And that's when the central system is basically built from unitary heat pump water heaters with the integrated tanks. Either one of those installed individually that can meet the needs of multiple households, or multiple integrated heat pump water heaters that are plumbed together to provide hot water to 2 or more households. So that's what that individual or ganged together means. And for those, they either have to be on the CEC's JA13 list, or they have to be an Energy Star commercial water heater. For large commercial, individually installed, which we expect will be the more common configuration, also just needs to be on that Energy Star commercial water heater list. And then the ganged together is a similar situation, and for that, it's JA13 or Energy Star. So we have qualified products lists published now on our incentive resources page for the residential unitary, the small business unitary QPL, and also for the large commercial QPL. So here are some of the products on the unitary residential and small business unitary QPL. And again, the eligibility is the exact same for all of those project types listed in the blue here. So you'll notice, most of the brands you're familiar with are on this: Rheem, Rude, A.O. Smith, Bradford White, State, American, American Standard, Richmond, Reliance, Harvest Thermal, and Lochinvar. And that includes Rheem's and A.O. Smith's newer 120 volt units. Unfortunately, at this point, Sanco 2 does not meet some of the connectivity requirements for eligible products. We know the Sanco 2 is a really great product that a lot of contractors hold in high regard, and which also makes heat pump water heater retrofits in some scenarios possible that wouldn't otherwise be possible. So we have been in the process of coordinating with Sanco 2 and the CPUC, California Public Utilities Commission, that is, on potential pathways to eligibility. Nothing is certain at this point, but we'll keep you updated if anything becomes possible. Okay, so on the multifamily side, again, there are incentives for the two types of multifamily projects: the multifamily unitary and the multifamily central. For unitary, it's just what we showed on the previous slide. For multifamily central, the heat pump water heaters, again, must qualify either by being in CBEC, or if it's the individual or ganged together, the J13 compliant or Energy Star. And all customized central heat pump water heater systems will be submitted as a custom equipment entry. Sorry, that should say custom, and more info on that soon. For commercial, the small business, again, is that same thing as all the residential unitary QPL, and large commercial, just shown in more detail here, either Energy Star if it's into an individual unit, or if it's ganged together, it's the J13 compliant or Energy Star. And we do have a QPL of all those eligible large commercial heat pump water heaters. The link is to Energy Star, and on our incentive resources page, we also just have a simple Excel version of that file that you can download. Oops, I clicked the link instead of this slide. Okay, so just a little bit on how these custom heat pump water heater submissions work. So a lot of central systems are custom built, so they'll be submitted as a unique custom system. This is all done in Iris, which is our online incentive processing platform. It's called Iris. And once you make a custom entry, it is stored and readily available in your own Iris account. So you'll only have to do that once per system. And you can see on this slide the information that you'll have to enter to do this custom entry. So brand name, model number, individual heat pump water heater model numbers, storage tank model numbers, swing tank model numbers, the heating capacity, the COP, total storage, and the refrigerant global warming potential. And if you need to do this custom equipment entry, our team is available to walk you through that, especially if it's your first time. Don't worry at all. We can help with that. Just have these slides here mostly as a reference to show that it's actually pretty straightforward. Again, you'll do this all online on our rebate processing system. So once you fill out all the required information and click submit, The system will actually give you a customized source ID, we call it, which is a combination of the manufacturer and model name. And then you'll just take that source ID back to the actual claim form, and you'll go to the material entry part and you'll type in that new source ID that you were given. All right, let's talk about installation now. And team, feel free to pause at any time if you just want to go over any Q&A verbally. So now we'll talk about what needs to be done when installing the water heater. Some of these activities will be new for most folks. So an overview here, aside from the thermostatic mixing valve requirement, which we covered earlier on and which applies to all project types, the other requirement that applies to all project types is that all heat pump water heaters must be configured by the contractor during installation to shift energy usage, sometimes you'll hear that referred to as load, out of the evening peak hours to the extent possible and into the daytime off-peak hours instead. And for residential, unitary, and small business, the contractor will just use the manufacturer app to set the heat pump water heater to follow a time of use rate. It's a pretty straightforward process. It'll take some getting used to, for the first installations, but once you've tried it, it's really quick. For multifamily, central, and large commercial projects, the contractor will need to set up customized scheduling, and the load shifting, or we call it load shifting in shorthand, needs to be done in a way that results in the reduction of at least 5 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour per year. And the tech team will work with the applicants to understand the control and scheduling requirements for these projects. Additionally, for the residential unitary projects, single family and multifamily, the heat pump water heaters must be sized at a minimum to meet the California Plumbing Code first hour rating. So more on that. Here's the first hour rating table from the Plumbing Code. And this is just a minimum requirement. So you should be referring to the manufacturer spec sheets and following the manufacturer sizing guidance. And for the most part, you shouldn't be having sizing issues if you do this. With some of the largest homes, we've seen that some 120-volt units might not have a high enough first hour rating. But again, this first hour rating is really just the minimum sizing that you should be doing. And if you can size it larger, that is great. We just cannot approve incentives for undersized heat pump water heaters. All right, so the time of use rate scheduling requirement. So setting a heat pump water heater to follow a time of use rate means that it is optimizing the timing of its electricity usage so that it's reducing usage during the more expensive peak hours. And during off-peak hours, it will ensure that the tank is at its fullest capacity. And then during peak hours, it'll only use electricity as needed to meet the hot water needs in the most efficient way possible. The manufacturers all have their own logic of how to do this optimization, but they all use advanced monitoring of the tank temperature and ambient temperatures to know when the heating needs to turn back on to avoid running out of hot water. And that is always the priority. So this time of use scheduling isn't anything crazy, it's always going to prioritize hot water for the customer over any, electricity usage reduction. And you may have heard of this capability also referred to as JA13. I mentioned JA13 on our equipment list. That is the technical name in the California Building Code language, which refers to the ability of the heat pump water heater to do this time of use scheduling. And for unitary heat pump water heaters, manufacturers offer a very simple way to do this via the manufacturer phone app. And for these projects, which use the manufacturer app to follow a TOU rate, we will need applicants to upload a photo or a screenshot from the manufacturer app confirming successful setup. So we know that this is new for the vast majority of contractors, and we're here to help. We don't want this to be a requirement that trips you up. So if you have any questions along the way, please do reach out to us. We're here to help. And please also review our very important article, Heat Pump Water Heater Installation Requirements and TOU Rate Scheduling. I know it's a mouthful, but that talks about this requirement in much more detail, and it gives you all the instructions that you need to know how to do this for each of the brands, including links to some of the example videos that you see here on this slide. Both of these videos are just about 2 minutes long, and it talks you through step by step how to do this setup with the manufacturer app. So for the multifamily central and large commercial installation requirements, as I mentioned, you'll have to use some more customized scheduling to shift energy usage out of the out of the peak evening hours and into the daytime instead. As we mentioned before, that needs to be done in a way that shifts at least 5 kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour, and that is annually. And multifamily central specifically also must install data monitoring equipment with two-way communication. That is not a requirement for the large commercial projects. So the multifamily system eligibility and the sizing will be determined through Ecotope's EcoSizer calculator, which can be found at the link here. So EcoSizer is an existing tool that's commonly used for sizing central systems. But now for these new tech incentives, there is a new module that Ecotope developed, and that module helps you calculate the storage capacity and the resulting load shifting potential and resulting incentive amounts for a tech. So you can plug in your system specifications, and the EcoSizer tool will tell you if you will be able to achieve that required 5 kilograms of CO2 annually. So this is a great tool. As you know, the multifamily incentives are not launched yet, but you can definitely go online, follow the link on this website, and you can get to the EcoSizer tool through there as well, and you can start playing around with that. Shay, is there anything else you would like to say about multifamily at this point? Explain any of that in more depth.
No, I think that was a good explanation.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, moving right along to customer requirements. So an overview of requirements by project type. So for single family, unitary, and on a time of use rate and in a demand response program. For multi is just that the property owner must enroll the common area meter on a time of use rate, and in a demand response program, there is actually no requirement for the tenants. I just got a message that my internet connection is unstable. Am I coming through okay still?
Yeah, you cut in and out for half a second, but you are fine now.
Okay, thank you. Just let me know if it becomes hard to hear. So for multifamily central, it's similar. There's no requirement for the tenants, but the property owner must enroll the meter or meters linked to the central heat pump water heater system in a demand response program. And we thought it was really important that we don't actually impose this requirement on the tenants. We know it would be really difficult for a building owner to make sure that every single tenant complies with those requirements. So instead, it's just a recommendation for tenants. We will provide collateral to multifamily building owners that they can post in the common room or hand out to their tenants that just talks about demand response and time of use rates. And then the large commercial unitary, the customer must just enroll in a demand response program. And in this presentation, we won't talk too much about the why behind these requirements, but the onboarding video that you'll all need to complete covers this. And we also talked more about this during our demand response program options webinar that we held last Friday. And we sent you all the link to that recording in the launch day communications. I would definitely recommend taking a look at that video. The demand response enrollment requirement will also be unfamiliar to a lot of customers. And so if you, as the contractor, can be more educated on that and help the customer through that process, that will be hugely beneficial. But I guess just as an overview, both the demand response and TOU and heat pump water heating scheduling requirements are because of, these high levels of state funding. As we continue to install electric appliances, we see more and more electric demand, especially in the evening hours in California, those peak hours. And as we do that, it just becomes more difficult to supply all of the electricity that's being demanded at those hours. So these measures, the scheduling and the demand response, are designed to both take strain off the grid so that we continue to electrify and we can continue to meet that electric demand with our clean, renewable energy that's more available in the daytime. And it's meant to also help customers pay less for the energy that they're using to operate their new heat pump water heater. Okay, so for both time of use and demand response, the customer will specifically agree to the requirements by checking certain boxes on their customer agreement to the tech program terms and conditions. That's a document that they will need to sign, and contractors will need to confirm that all of the necessary boxes on those terms and conditions are checked, or else you'll have to go back to the customer. So that signed terms and conditions needs to be uploaded to the claim form and it needs to be complete. So for time of use, what the customer is agreeing to is actually just that their utility will transition them to a time of use rate if they're not already on one. No further action is needed from the customer. We will coordinate that all on the back end. And many Californians are already on a time of use rate, especially those who have solar or an electric vehicle. For this time of use transition process, we have to collect the customer's electric account number. We ask for that on the terms and conditions. They will write it in. We strongly recommend that you, as the contractor, confirms that the customer has entered the correct utility account number. If you're comfortable asking for a copy of the customer's electric bill, you could do that and you could pre-fill the correct account number in for the customer. Or when you're on site, you could ask them for a copy of their bill to review for account number accuracy. The terms and conditions clarify for each utility exactly which account number we're asking for, and we also have a knowledge base article, surprise, surprise, with more information on that. So for demand response, the customer has to actively enroll in the demand response program of their choosing. And if the customer does not have an eligible demand response program or a TOU rate in their area listed on our program website, then the enrollment requirements do not apply to them. So for now, for example, we do not require the TOU rate for customers of publicly owned electric utilities or the munis, so SMUD and LADWP, for example. Even though SMUD does have a TOU rate, we don't have that TOU rate listed on our program website, which means the customer does not have to enroll in it. And this could change. Again, there is some action happening on the regulatory level, so we will let you know if there's any updates to that. Okay, a few more details on the time of use and demand response requirements. So for the time of use, customers can opt to be placed on a default time of use rate, and that's basically each utility has selected one rate that they think will provide the most benefits to the most customers. or the customer can choose a specific rate. And on our terms and conditions, we link to a website that gives them more information about this and kind of what those different rates mean and how they might choose one that's good for them. And any customer already on a time of use rate will not have their rate changed unless they specifically ask for that. Solar and EV rates are time of use rates. So if the customer is already on that, nothing more is needed. For demand response, there are many program options. Enrollment can be as quick as 3 minutes. Some of the program options even offer a referral program for contractors where you can actually get paid bonus by the demand response program provider for every customer that you enroll, but you have to use the tech-specific referral link. So please do refer to the demand response webinar that we gave and also our demand response knowledge base article so you can make sure to understand those great options for you. Our program website has all of the eligible demand response program options. Customers should take a look at that so they can understand and choose a program that's really beneficial for them. But contractors can also select a particular program or a slightly narrowed down selection of programs just so you can help minimize the potential information overload to the customer. And the contractor is expected to help the customer enroll before offering the incentive. And as I mentioned before, the residential customers of utilities that don't have time of use rates or eligible demand response programs listed on our website are still eligible for the tech incentives, and they're just exempt from these particular enrollment requirements. We have a small separate funding stream that allows us to do this. And here are the web pages that you can refer to for more information. These are meant to be customer-facing websites. These are the ones that we link them from the terms and conditions, which you will provide, but they're also great contractor resources. So final slide of this section, we understand that this demand response enrollment is a significant added effort on top of your typical business practices. We hope the higher incentives help with that, but we also recognize that verification could take some time on our end, and therefore we will pay the incentives to you before we confirm the demand response enrollment. That is for the single family and small business incentive claims. However, it is very critical that we see a high percentage of customers enrolling in demand response. That increases the likelihood of future funding. And so because of this, corrective actions, including program suspensions, could be taken for contractors whose customers do not consistently enroll in a demand response program. We don't want to take that. We never want to use program suspension. So we will be working with every contractor to improve your enrollment percentages, if those aren't looking really high. So we do eventually have the proper data streams to verify the demand response enrollment for every customer in any of those programs that they choose. And we plan to, on some regular cadence, send you information summarizing the percentage of successful enrollment that you're achieving with your customers. And we'll talk to the contractors who are being most successful with this, figure out what some of those best practices are. And then we'll talk to the contractors that are not doing so well and work with you on a plan to improve how that's going. Oh, and just one note. So this website down below has all of the program options for customers and contractors to review. Okay, we are breezing right through. So now we'll just go over the customer agreement. This is a really important document that we do require to be uploaded. So tech has always had a customer agreement. You're probably familiar with that. It was called Exhibit B as an attachment to the Trade Professional Participation Agreement. It is still Exhibit B in the Trade Professional Participation Agreement, so you may have seen this new and improved customer agreement when you re-signed that TPPA. But now we're also linking it on our site as a standalone fillable PDF. You can find that at the link on this slide. And we always asked that the contractors include the customer agreement in their invoice or their contract and upload it to the project, but we weren't super strict about confirming that, but now it is its own separate file upload requirement. And so these terms and conditions are required for both HVAC and water heating projects. The HVAC, the customer only has to fill out a more limited part of these terms and conditions. So we've broken it into 3 sections, and the second section is specific only to the heat pump water heater projects. And we highly recommend that you have the customers acknowledge the terms and conditions as early as possible in the process, just so there's no surprises that could put the incentive at risk. They'll need to agree to and understand those demand response and time of use requirements. And the terms and conditions also provides protections to you, the contractor participant, specifically around budget availability, in case, toward the end of the program, when we're low on budget, in case a job is sold, but the budget runs out. So I can show you the clause that protects you against that. I think it's risks and benefits of participation and the program funding here on the right side. Yeah, so here are just the general terms, pretty customary, nothing too new here. There is some new notice language due to new California consumer protection laws that have gone into effect recently. So here's the really important new part, section 2, the heat pump water heater terms and conditions. So first we talk about who needs to sign this section of the agreement. It's typically going to be the same customer, who you have on the invoice and who's signing the overall agreement, but you could have some situations where, it's a rental situation. And in that case, we really just need to make sure that the electric account holder of the account associated with that new heat pump water heater is the person who's signing, because that's the person that has to do the demand response and the time of use enrollment. So in the second box, you can see that we have some explanation of demand response, and we link the customers to the demand response page to learn more about their options. And this box that they have to check right here, they're just saying that they understand and they will enroll in a demand response program. And then the time of use rate requirement, here's the beginning of that language. We explained that it only applies to some customers. So large commercial and the multifamily central do not have to do the time of use rate enrollment. And some more info on time of use, and then just acknowledging the requirement. There again is a link to the website about the time of use rate. You can also see here we say that if our website does not list a time of use rate for your electricity provider, then this requirement does not apply to you. And then here's the option where the customer can check the box to either be put on the default rate by their utility, or even just say I'm already on one. Or the second box, they can specify which time of use rate specifically they would like to be moved to. And then here's where we will collect their account number. So you can see we've specified, the exact number of digits that's needed. For SCE, we've even shown that it starts with an 800. And there is more information, like I mentioned, on the knowledge base of where on the bill you would find these numbers. We just couldn't fit all of that information into the terms and conditions, but it's a resource that you can use to make sure the customers are putting in the right account number. And if we get an incorrect account number, that will lead to delays with the claim approval. And then, yeah, there's where they sign to that section 2. And here's the final section 3, acknowledgement and signature. This is acknowledging the whole terms and conditions. And now we're back to just the normal customer, whoever you were working with on the project and whoever is on the invoice. Okay, we are at our final section, key considerations and recap. So we'll talk about all projects and then we'll have slides specific to each project type. So key considerations for all projects. Again, the thermostatic mixing valves are required for all projects. And this is actually something that I don't believe we've noted yet, but permits are required for 100% of heat pump water heater projects. You don't have to have the permit closed, but we will need a real permit number. The permit does need to be closed eventually, that's how the permits work. And we actually, based on the rules for this program, have to do an annual outreach effort to all of the building departments. We'll send them all of the permit numbers that we got from you for all of these projects, and we'll just ask, was this closed? Please get back to us. And then that will just be an evaluation result. Our evaluator will have to describe what percentage of projects permits were closed. Okay, ask your customer who provides their electricity. We will ask for this on the claim form, and it'll also be used to determine whether they need to enroll in a time of use rate and demand response program. So that is helpful for you to understand so you can help the customer navigate those requirements. All customers, heat pump water heater and HVAC customers must sign the new program terms and conditions. We've mentioned this before, but customers with solar or EV charger are likely already on a time of use rate. All of the major investor-owned utilities, PG&E, Southern California Edison, and SDG&E actually went through a process within the last few years of defaulting all of their customers onto time of use rates. Now, there was an option for customers to opt out of this, but a lot of customers are already on a time of use rate because of that process. And the time of use enrollment must be confirmed by the utility before the incentives can be paid. So we will be working with the utilities on a weekly basis to do this confirmation. Nothing is needed from the participant beyond checking those boxes about the time of use rate and filling in their account number. But just want to acknowledge to you that this back and forth with the utility will mean we have a slightly longer claim processing time than we do with the average HVAC incentive. We hope that this process will become really ironed out, but in the first few weeks, just could take a little longer. So just wanted you to be aware of that affecting the claim processing timeline. In a best case scenario where you make corrections quickly and everything happens pretty smoothly, we expect we could pay out those incentives in about a month, and it could take longer if corrections take a long time or if we're ironing out some of the wrinkles with the utilities. Okay, single family. So one thing to note is reservations are not required, but they are highly recommended. This is the way that you can guarantee that there will be incentives ready and available for your project once you finish the installation and come back with all the complete info. So to reserve the funds, please start a claim at the link, the normal claim form, and you just save it as a draft. You have to include the customer name, address, and the signed terms and conditions for that to officially count as a reservation. Reminder that customers with lower incomes may be eligible for higher equity incentives, and there is a note about that on the terms and conditions that they sign, including a link to a page to learn more and to check their eligibility. Ensure you can effectively report on the relevant electrical or pre-electrification costs if you are pursuing those additional incentives. You'll remember there was a slide a bit ago that bulleted out all of the eligible electrical and pre-electrification activities. So on the claim form, you'll have to select from a drop-down which of those were completed. And then you can review the full claim form and/or a checklist of key activities that salespeople and installers need to make sure they do, so that you can submit an eligible project. These are great resources and they are available both on our knowledge base and our incentive resources page. This incentive resources page on the Switches On is a great place to visit. We have all of our flyers and collateral linked there. We also have a budget table, and we also have our qualified products lists on that site. And just a reminder that these new claim forms will ask for information that is above and beyond what you normally collect. So just make sure you're familiar with those requirements so you reduce your need to reach back to the customer. We want to make sure you have everything you need right up front. Multifamily. Oh, yeah.
I have a question. I wanted to see if you wanted to be able to answer it live. I think a lot of people have the same question.
Yeah.
Came in and said, how can customers prove that they're using the time of use mode on their heat pump water heater, to receive funds for their participation?
That is a great question. So you'll have to upload a photo from the manufacturer app that was used to set up that TOU scheduling. And actually on that knowledge base article, which I mentioned that shows you all the instructions for how to set that up for each manufacturer, we also include example screenshots of whichever screen you'll need to provide to us on the application. And we recognize that, when you're first doing this, since it's new, an installer might occasionally forget to take the screenshot while they're on site. So there's also the option for customers to take a same or similar screenshot on their phone. So you can reach out to the customer to provide that to you. In extenuating circumstances where you're having trouble getting that screenshot, just reach out to us, let us know what the situation is, and we can talk through it.
Another quick question that came in.
Mhm.
It says, should you ask the customer who delivers your electricity? For many customers, the CCA provides the electricity and the investor-owned utility delivers it. For muni utilities, the muni provides and delivers the electricity.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for CCAs, we're just looking for, who the IOU is, like PG&E, for example. So who delivers your electricity could be a question, but the majority of customers are more accustomed with PG&E as their utility, even if they are with a CCA. PG&E is still the one providing the bills. It's still a PG&E electric bill, even though somewhere on their bill it would say, East Bay Clean Energy or whatever it is that would be listed on the bill, but it's PG&E branding, so that's what most customers will be familiar with. You can also look at their electric meter. So, even if they're with a CCA, it would still be their main electric IOU whose name is on the meter. So I would recommend, if they answer anything other than PG&E, SoCal Edison, or SDG&E, dig a little further. We're not looking for the name of the CCA. For the munis, I think you can ask who is their electric utility because they will probably know who that is, because the IOU would just be providing the gas service then in most cases. And again, you can ask to see their bill or who sends their electricity bill, or you can look at their meter. I hope that helped. It's a great question.
Emily, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to add that on the claim form where we ask for the utility provider, electric utility provider, there is a space right next to it that where you can put in the municipal name.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Esther. In our dropdown, we have PG&E, SCE, SDG&E. We also have the most common electric munis that we see projects for. So that's SMUD, LADWP, and Alameda. But if the customer is with a different electric muni, then yeah, that's when you would fill in that. You would select other and fill in the blank. Great point and great question. Let me know if there's any follow-up questions to that. Okay, I believe we were just about to start this multifamily slide. So as we've mentioned before, all multifamily projects will require reservations as a first step. And you can find the reservation form on our Tech Multifamily page. There's also a lot of multifamily resources available there. All reserved projects will have a 90-day checkpoint after approval called proof of project milestone. And that's when we'll need to collect the full design drawings and equipment specifications. Multifamily, again, is defined now as any building with more than one unit. That is a change from the first round of tech incentives. This will not affect the available incentive though, because the incentive rates for unitary heat pump water heaters are the same for multifamily and single family. It's that 3,100 base incentive per unit. Only the common area meters or the meters serving the central system need to be enrolled in the time of use and demand response if one is available. Again, tenants are exempt from the requirement, but it is recommended. And then the central system incentives are determined by using Ecotope's Ecosizer tool. I just saw a really relevant question pop up, so I'll go ahead and answer it. If I have two single unit buildings on a property, is that single or multifamily? I believe that would be single family. There's some cases with like, what's it called? HOAs or townhomes where that would be multifamily. But Shay, do you have any more guidance on that question? If it's just two single buildings on a property?
No, I believe you're right. It would be counted as single family.
Great. Thank you, Shay. Yeah, so two separate single family applications in that case. Yeah, there can always be a lot of different scenarios for these building types. So you can always reach out to our various email addresses for more clarification, and we can pass you on to the Association for Energy Affordability team, AEA, who's the multifamily lead, to just clarify any of those types of questions. Okay, commercial. Steps to keep in mind. So remember that for now, at least, commercial heat pump water heater incentives are limited to businesses or facilities served by one of the electric investor-owned utilities only. So PG&E, SCE, and SDG&E, not available to customers of the electric municipalities. This could expand in the future, as I noted before, and we will keep you in the loop. Only projects where the heat pump water heater serves one single business will qualify. And the buildings don't need to be truly commercial. They could be any non-residential building, such as a government building or school. For small business, reservations are not required, but they are highly recommended. Just like I mentioned for single family, this is how you make sure that the incentives are still available after you complete the project and come back to submit. And it's the same thing, you just do a reservation by starting an incentive claim form and saving it as a draft. For large commercial, reservations are required, just like multifamily, and that reservation form can be found on our Tech Commercial Heat Pump Water Heater website. Okay, we are almost done here. So some important resources, again, we'll be sending these slides out so you can find the links here. All of these resources, I believe, were also linked in our launch day email, so please reference that as well. This first link here is the Contractor Hub on the Switches On. It's kind of a landing page that guides you to other key resources such as our training hub, marketing materials, and incentive portals. And then the second link here, the heat pump water heater requirements landing page, that is one page that then links you to all of the customer-facing pages about demand response, time of use, and the equity incentives. Our incentive resources page is what I mentioned before, a great resource that has all of our flyers, our collateral, our qualified products list, and our budget table. The knowledge base is what I mentioned before, the in-depth searchable database of all of our program information. It's in the form of articles, but you can just search key terms to find the information that you need. It's also where we have our chatbot. Commercial incentive site, overview of different commercial rules, as well as a link to our reservation portal for the large commercial. And then the multifamily, similar, a lot of multifamily rules and resources, as well as a link to the reservation portal. And then finally, there is our tech YouTube page. So we have a lot of program videos, including recordings of these webinars, as well as our new 15-minute onboarding training about the new heat pump water heater incentive rules. So we want to make sure that all of these videos are accessible to all of your installers so that you can share them out in a way that's easy for them to access and absorb. That brings us to the end. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I know it's launch week, it's really busy, it's really exciting, but it's great to see you taking the time, to learn all of these key rules so that you can do eligible projects and make sure you have all the resources you need. So I'll pause and see if there are any other questions that we'd like to talk through. Okay, well, I think we can let you go then. Thank you so much, and we are always available to support you, so you can reach out to the email address on this slide and we'll make sure you get routed correctly. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great week.